The night was cold, and the streets of the small town were empty. A man walked alone, his coat wrapped tightly around him, his boots making soft echoes on the wet ground. He had just finished his long shift at the factory, and he wanted nothing more than to reach home, sit in silence, and rest. But fate had other plans for him. As he passed near the edge of the forest, he heard a sound. It was not the sound of an animal, nor the sound of the wind. It was soft, almost like a whimper, a cry that was too weak to belong to a grown creature. The man stopped, his heart beating faster. He listened again, and there it was, the faint, broken cry of something lost, something suffering. Cautiously, he stepped off the road and into the darkness of the trees. Each step felt heavier, the night pressing down around him. The sound grew clearer, fragile, like glass ready to break. He followed the sound until he reached a clearing, and there he froze, lying on the ground, half hidden by fallen leaves and broken branches. Was a small figure. At first, he thought it was a child, maybe hurt, maybe abandoned. But as he moved closer, the truth revealed itself. The creature was not human. Its skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, pale and strange. Its limbs were thin, too fragile to belong to a child of Earth, and its eyes, when they opened, were larger than any human eyes, filled with a soft blue light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. The man's breath caught. He'd heard stories, whispers, in bars and markets, of strange beings spotted far from the cities. Aliens, some said, dangerous and cursed. Others laughed, saying such tales were nothing more than drunken lies. But here, lying broken before him, was no lie. The small alien child tried to move, but its legs trembled and fell back to the earth. It made a soft sound, not in words he could understand, but in pain and fear. The man's instincts battled within him. He could walk away, pretend he never saw it, save himself from danger, or he could reach out, knowing that his life might never be the same again. His hand trembled as he knelt down beside the child. He could see wounds across its arms, small burns, and scars that spoke of cruelty. Who had done this, he wondered, and why would anyone harm something so small, so helpless? The child looked at him, and in its glowing eyes he saw not anger, not danger, but a plea, a silent cry for help. The man whispered softly, though he knew the creature might not understand, "It's all right. I won't hurt you." The child blinked, as if trying to trust, as if hope was a heavy weight inside its chest. With great care, the man lifted the fragile body into his arms. It was lighter than he expected, so weak he could feel the bones through its skin. It shivered, and he pulled his coat tighter around it, giving what warmth he could. As he carried the child out of the forest, strange thoughts filled his mind. What if someone saw him carrying this alien being? What if the government, or worse, whoever had hurt the child, came looking for it? Yet, no matter how heavy those fears grew, his steps did not stop. Something deep inside him told him that leaving the child behind would haunt him forever. The road stretched before him, lonely and endless. The night air felt colder, as if the world itself was warning him. But the warmth of the small creature against his chest gave him strength. This was no ordinary night. This was the night his life would change. He did not know how, he did not know why, but he knew that nothing after this moment would ever be the same. Behind him, in the forest shadows, a pair of red lights blinked. Faint in watching, he did not see them, but they were there, and as he walked away, carrying the broken child, something far beyond human understanding had already begun. The man reached his small house on the edge of town. The place was quiet, only the sound of the night wind brushing against the wooden walls. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, carrying the fragile alien child in his arms. The warmth of the room was little comfort, but at least it was better than the cold air outside. He laid the child gently on an old couch, its surface covered with a worn blanket. The creature's eyes opened slowly, still glowing faintly blue in the dim light. It did not speak, yet the way it looked at him was enough. There was fear, yes, but also something deeper, a question, maybe even trust. The man knelt down, his tired eyes studying the small figure. Its legs were weak, trembling when it tried to shift. He realized it could not stand on its own. Disabled, he thought, hurt and unable to walk. His chest tightened, because he knew what that meant. In his world, even humans who could not walk suffered cruelty. What must life be like for this alien child, he wondered. He brought a bowl of water from the kitchen. At first, the child only stared at it, unsure. Then slowly, with trembling hands, it reached forward. The man watched, careful not to move too quickly. The child dipped its lips into the water and drank. For a moment, the silence in the room was broken only by the sound of small gulps. It was such a simple thing, yet it felt powerful. The beginning of something unspoken. Hours passed as the man tried to make the child comfortable. He wrapped a blanket around its thin frame. He cleaned the wounds with gentle hands, though he was no doctor. Each time he touched the broken skin, the child flinched. But then its glowing eyes would meet his, and slowly the fear began to fade. He realized it was learning to trust him. Even without words, the man spoke softly, though he knew the child did not understand. "Don't worry, you're safe here," he whispered. He told stories of his own childhood, of the times when he too felt alone. It seemed foolish, speaking to something that could not reply. But somehow, he felt less alone too, and maybe the child understood more than he thought. The alien raised its hand once, reaching towards him. It touched his arm lightly, almost like asking if he was real. The man froze, then let out a soft breath. "Yes," he said, voice breaking a little. "I'm real, and I'm here." That small touch was more than words. It was a bridge between two very different lives. Days began to pass in strange rhythm. Each morning, the man would wake early to find the child watching the sunlight creep through the window. Its eyes followed the birds outside, the movement of leaves. It was as if the alien world around it was new and frightening, yet beautiful. The man noticed how the child listened closely when he spoke, though it never replied. Its glowing eyes showed understanding. Sometimes it would mimic small gestures, a nod, a blink, a faint smile. These little moments filled the house with a warmth he had not felt in years. But at night, the silence was heavier. The child often shivered in its sleep, as if haunted by memories. The man would hear soft cries, muffled, broken. He could only sit beside the couch, whispering gentle words until the child's breathing calmed. He did not know its past, but he could feel its pain no child should ever carry. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, the man lit a small fire in the stove. The child sat wrapped in the blanket, its fragile form glowing faintly in the light. For the first time, it made a sound soft, almost like music. The man's eyes widened, his heart leaping. He did not understand the sound, but it was not random. It was calm, almost grateful, like the alien's way of saying, "Thank you." He smiled, feeling something stir deep inside him. This was no longer just about kindness. This was becoming a bond stronger than fear, stronger than the warnings, stronger than the danger he knew was coming. Somehow, he felt this child had entered his life for a reason, and no matter what the future held, he could not turn away. Outside, in the storm, shadows moved quietly near the forest line. Unseen eyes searched the land, tracking, waiting. The man did not know it yet, but the silent bond he had built was about to be tested. For bonds that grow in silence are often the ones the universe tries hardest to break. The days turned into weeks, and the man's small house became a secret place. Inside, the fragile alien child slowly recovered, though its legs still refused to carry its weight. The man gave food, warmth, and whatever comfort he could in return. The child gave him silence, trust, and small gestures that spoke louder than words. But one night, something new happened. The child's eyes glowed brighter, and strange symbols flickered across its skin, faint as moonlight. The man froze, watching the strange glow spread like living veins. Then, without warning, his radio on the table crackled to life. Though it was not even plugged in, a soft hum filled the room, and voices whispered through the static. The man stepped closer, his heart racing. The child looked at him, then at the radio. The whispers grew louder, strange words in a language he could not understand, but slowly, like broken echoes, pieces of meaning formed. Survivor. Last hope. Hunted. The man stared, realizing the child was the source. It was not just weak, not just broken. It was carrying messages, memories, maybe warnings. The galaxy itself seemed to speak through it. That night, the man could not sleep. He sat by the fire, staring at the sleeping child wrapped in a blanket. Questions tormented him. Who were the hunters? Why was this child alone? And what did last hope mean? The next morning, he carried the child outside. The air was crisp, the sky wide and blue. The child raised its face to the sun, and for the first time, the man saw something new, a small smile. It was faint, but real, and then the symbols flickered again on its skin. This time, he heard a whisper, not from the radio, but directly in his mind. His eyes widened, his breath caught. The voice was soft, trembling but clear. "I am alone," it said. Though the words were broken and heavy, the man almost dropped the child, shocked by the sudden connection. You can speak," he whispered. The child shook its head weakly. "Not speak, only show. Only whisper." The man sat down on the grass, his heart pounding. Slowly, he realized the truth. The child could share fragments of thought, small pieces of memory, and in those fragments, he saw flashes, a great city of glass towers under alien skies. Then, fire, war, hunters with red eyes. And finally, the child hiding, running, falling. Man trembled, unable to understand everything. But he felt the weight. This child was not just abandoned, it was the last of its kind. Or maybe the last to carry something precious. And those hunters, they were still searching. The bond between them grew deeper. At night, when the whispers returned, he would listen carefully. Sometimes they came through broken machines, the radio, the old television, even his pocket watch. Other times, they came straight into his mind. Each time the child grew weaker, as if sharing these pieces costed energy. The man hated to see it suffer. Yet he knew these whispers were important. One evening, he gathered his courage and asked aloud, "What do they want from you?" The child's glowing eyes filled with fear. Its whisper came like a knife of cold wind. "They want the key inside me." The man shook his head. "What key?" The child placed a small hand on its chest, right over the heart. "Memory. Power. Hope," it whispered. Then its body shook, as if the effort was too much, and it fell into restless sleep. The man sat frozen, his hands trembling. Hope, power, memory. Words that could mean anything. But one thing was clear. This was no ordinary child. This was a living secret, one that the galaxy wanted either destroyed or controlled. And somehow, it had fallen into his hands. The next day, strange signs appeared around town. Strangers asking quiet questions, shadows watching from the edges of streets. The man noticed unfamiliar vehicles parked near the forest line. He tried to act normal, but deep inside, he knew the hunters were closer. The whispers of the galaxy had already reached them. That night, as the man locked his door and sat near the sleeping child, he whispered to himself, "I don't know what you carry, but I swear, I won't let them take you." The child stirred, its glowing eyes opening for just a moment. It reached weakly for his hand and whispered one word into his mind. "Father." The man froze, his throat tight, his chest heavy. He had never expected this, never thought of himself as anyone's protector. But in that one word, the child had bound him forever. And deep in his heart he knew the whispers of the galaxy had chosen him for a reason. The storm was coming, and he could no longer run from it. The night was quiet, too quiet. The man sat by the window, staring out at the empty road. The alien child slept in the other room, wrapped in a blanket, its soft glow lighting the walls. But the man's heart was restless. His instincts told him something was coming. He had noticed the signs all week. Unfamiliar men in dark coats standing at the edge of the town. Strange vehicles parked near the forest, engines running but never moving. Shadows that stayed too long under the streetlights. And whispers in the bar about outsiders asking questions no one wanted to answer. Tonight, the air felt heavy. The crickets were silent. The dogs in the distance did not bark. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm. And then he saw them. Lights, red and sharp, moved through the trees. Figures stepped out of the forest, their armor gleaming faintly under the moon. They were not men, at least not fully. Their faces were hidden by masks, their bodies tall and thin. Their eyes glowed with the same red he had seen in his nightmares. Hunters. The man's stomach turned cold. He rushed back to the child, who was now awake, its glowing eyes wide with fear. "They found us," the man whispered, his voice shaking. The child clung to his arm, trembling. The whispers inside his head came again, broken and weak. "They take me. Kill me." The man's jaw tightened, anger burning in his chest. "No," he said firmly. "I won't let them." He pulled out an old shotgun from the cupboard, its barrel worn but still strong. It was the only weapon he had. His hands shook. But his heart was steady. Outside, the hunters moved like shadows, silent and precise. They scanned the ground with strange devices, red beams cutting through the dark. One of them raised its head, listening, then, in a voice like steel grinding, it spoke, "Target near. We take it tonight." The man closed the shutters and turned off the lights. The house sank into darkness. Only the child's faint glow remained. He crouched beside it, holding the shotgun close. "Stay quiet, don't move," he whispered. The child nodded weakly, tears glimmering in its bright eyes. The first knock came, loud and heavy. The door rattled, the sound echoing through the house. The man's heart raced, sweat rolling down his face. Again, the knock came, harder this time, then a voice from outside, harsh and cold. "We know it is here, human. Give us the child, and you live." The man swallowed hard, his grip tightening on the gun. He whispered to himself, "Over my dead body." The hunters did not wait for an answer. With a single strike, the wooden door cracked. Splinters flying, they stepped inside, their glowing eyes cutting through the dark like fire. The man fired the shotgun. The blast thundered through the room. One hunter staggered back, its mask cracking, sparks flying from the wound. But the others did not flinch. They moved fast, too fast, their steps silent even on the broken wood. The child cried out, the glow of its skin flaring brighter. The whispers filled the man's head. "Run, hide, protect." But there was no place left to run. The man fired again, hitting another hunter. But the gun was old, the shells few. He knew he could not fight them all. Yet something inside him refused to give up. He stood between the child and the hunters, his body shaking, his eyes burning with defiance. "You'll have to kill me first," he said, voice raw. For a moment, the hunters paused, perhaps surprised that a simple human dared to resist them. Then one stepped forward, raising a long weapon that glowed with red light. But before it could strike, the child screamed. The sound was not human, not natural. It was a wave of energy, a broken yet powerful cry. The hunters stumbled, their masks flickering, their weapons shaking. The man turned, shocked. The child's eyes were blazing, symbols racing across its skin. It was weak, fragile, yet something inside it still carried power, the power the hunters wanted. The man understood then. This child was not only a survivor, it was a key, a living secret. And the hunters would never stop until they claimed it. With the last of his shells, the man fired again, forcing the hunters back. He grabbed the child, lifting it into his arms, and ran through the back door. The night air cut into his lungs. The forest loomed ahead. Behind him, the hunters roared, their voices like thunder. The chase had begun. Branches whipped against his face as he ran. His arms burned from carrying the child, but he did not stop. The glow of red lights followed close. Shadows moving through the trees like demons. The whispers in his head screamed, "Run, father! Run!" And he did. With every step, he knew the truth. This was no longer about choice. This was war. A human and a disabled alien child against the hunters of the galaxy. And neither of their lives would ever be the same again. The forest was alive with the sound of pursuit. Branches cracked, leaves trembled, and the heavy steps of the hunters echoed through the night. The man's breath came in sharp gasps as he carried the fragile alien child in his arms. His muscles ached, but his grip never loosened. The child clung to him tightly, glowing faintly. Its whispers trembling inside his mind. "They will not stop. They want me." The man pushed forward, stumbling through the darkness. He knew he could not run forever. The hunters were stronger, faster, and their technology was far beyond his own. He had no allies, no weapons left except the rusted shotgun with an empty chamber. And yet, as fear gnawed at his heart, another feeling rose higher: determination. Finally, he reached an old shed hidden deep in the woods. It had belonged to his father long ago. Used for storing tools and forgotten memories, now it was his only shelter. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Laying the child carefully on a pile of dry hay, the child's eyes fluttered, its breathing shallow. "You safe?" "Here," it whispered weakly into his mind. But the man shook his head. "No, not safe. Not yet." He barricaded the door with broken planks and rusty chains. His hands worked quickly, his body trembling with exhaustion. Every sound outside made him flinch. Every shadow pressed heavier on his chest. He knew it was only a matter of time before the hunters found them again. Sitting beside the child, he closed his eyes for a moment. Memories flooded his mind. The nights he spent alone after losing his family, the years of silence, the empty life he had lived, and now this fragile creature had entered his world. A child not of his blood, not even of his kind, yet it had called him father. And something inside him had changed forever. He looked at the child, its glowing eyes watching him with trust. And he realized the truth. He had a choice. He could give the child up to the hunters, save himself, and return to his old life. Or he could stand against them, fight a battle he could not win. He took a deep breath, his voice low and steady. "No. There's no choice. I will fight." The child's lips trembled, and the whisper came, fragile but strong. "You die if fight." The man smiled faintly, though his eyes burned with pain. "Maybe, but if I run away, if I give you up, then I'm already dead inside." Outside, the forest stirred. The sound of the hunters grew louder, their voices like cold metal scraping stone. "Target close. Human resistance detected. Eliminate if necessary." The man tightened his grip on the shotgun. Even if it was empty, his jaw clenched, and he whispered to himself, "You want the child. You'll have to go through me." The child's skin glowed brighter, symbols racing. Faintly across its arms, its voice reached his mind again, this time with a softness that felt almost like love. "You protect. Always." The man touched its small hand, feeling its weakness, yet also its strength. "Always," he said, his voice breaking. The hunters reached the shed, their red lights cutting through the cracks in the wood. The man's heart pounded, his breath sharp. He stood tall, blocking the child with his body, his eyes fixed on the door. The hunters struck. Wood splintered, chains broke. The first figure stepped inside, tall and deadly, weapon glowing with red fire. The man raised the shotgun and pulled the trigger. The empty click echoed in the room. The hunter let out a metallic laugh, stepping closer. But before it could strike, the child cried out, its glow bursting like a wave. The symbols on its skin flared. And for a moment, the hunters stumbled, their red lights flickering. The man grabbed an old iron rod from the floor and swung with all his strength. The weapon struck one hunter's mask. Sparks flying, the creature fell back, hissing in rage. But more poured inside, their steps relentless, their eyes burning. The man fought like a cornered animal, each swing fueled by desperation. His body bled, His arms screamed in pain, but he never moved away from the child. Even as blows rained down on him, he stood his ground. The child reached out, its glow brighter. Now whispers filled the air, no longer just in the man's head but in the very walls. Father. Protect. Hope. The hunters faltered for a moment, as if the whispers burned them. The man seized the chance, striking again, pushing them back. But deep inside, he knew he could not hold them forever. He had only one choice left. He turned. To the child, his voice urgent. You have to use your power. Whatever it is, you have to fight too. The child shook its head weakly, tears glowing in its eyes. Too weak. We'll die, the man's voice broke. But his eyes were firm. Then we die together. But we don't give up. The hunters raised their weapons, the red light filling the shed like fire. The man stood ready, iron rod shaking in his hand. The child clutched his arm, whispering one last word, trust. And then, with a burst of light that split the night, the child's power awakened. The hunters screamed, their masks cracking, their weapons shattering. The shed shook, the air trembled, and the man shielded his eyes. In that moment, the choice was made, not just by him, but by both of them. To stand, to fight, to never surrender, together. The shed burned with light, brighter than fire, brighter than any star the man had ever seen. The hunters staggered back, their red eyes flickering, their weapons melting in their hands. The alien child floated for a moment above the ground, glowing symbols racing across its body like living fire. Its cry shook the walls, a sound of pain, of power, of survival. The man shielded his eyes, his heart pounding with fear and awe. He wanted to run, but he could not leave. This was not just a child anymore. This was something greater, something the hunters had feared and wanted for themselves, the child's. Light struck outward in waves, throwing two hunters into the trees. Their armor cracked. Their voices rose in metallic screams, but power came with a cost. The glow around the child dimmed suddenly. Its body trembling, it collapsed into the man's arms, its small chest rising and falling with weak breaths. The man held it close, whispering, I've got you. I'm here. But there was no time to rest. The remaining hunters regrouped outside the burning shed. Their leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, his mask marked with strange alien scars. His voice was like thunder rolling across stone. The key is unstable. Take it now. Kill the human. The man's blood ran cold, but his hands tightened around the child. He could not fight them all. He knew that, but he also knew there was no turning back. This was the final stand. He carried the child out of the broken shed, into the open clearing where the moonlight touched the earth. The hunters surrounded him, weapons raised, their red glow cutting through the dark. The man set the child down gently, then picked up the iron rod again. His body ached, his wounds bled, but his eyes burned with fire. If you want them, he growled, you'll have to kill me first. The hunters advanced, silent and merciless. The man swung the iron rod, striking one across the mask, sparks flying. Another raised its blade, slicing across his arm, blood dripping down his sleeve. Pain ripped through him, but he refused to fall. The child's faint glow pulsed behind him, its whispers brushing his mind. Stand. Fight. Father. Each blow the man took, each step he forced forward, was for the child. He was no soldier, no hero, but in that moment, he became more than human. He became protector, shield, warrior. The hunters pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. He stumbled, his vision blurred, his strength slipping away. Then a small hand touched his back. The child, barely conscious, whispered one word into his mind, together. The man felt energy flow into him, faint but real. His muscles tightened, his eyes cleared. It was as if the child had given him a fragment of its own strength. He roared and swung the rod with renewed force. One hunter fell, another staggered. The leader stepped forward, his massive weapon glowing brighter. The man braced himself, but the child rose again, glowing weakly, its light mixed with his strength. Forming a bond stronger than any weapon, the leader struck, red fire slashing through the clearing. The man lifted the rod, and the child's glow wrapped around it. Steel met energy, sparks exploded. For a moment, the world froze, human will against alien power. The ground cracked beneath their feet. Trees bent under the force. The man's body screamed in pain. But he held on, his teeth clenched, his heart unbroken. The child cried out, its light blazing once more. The hunters were thrown back, their leader's mask shattering, revealing a face twisted and alien. The leader hissed in rage, stumbling, but refusing to fall. The man raised the rod again, the child's glow surrounding him like armor. And with one final strike, he brought it down. The weapon cracked against the leader's chest. The alien screamed, its body collapsing in fire and shadow. The remaining hunters froze, their eyes flickering. Without their leader, their will seemed broken. One by one, they turned and vanished into the trees, disappearing into the night. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of the man's heavy breathing. He dropped the iron rod, falling to his knees. The child lay in the grass, its glow fading, its body trembling. He crawled to it, lifting it gently into his arms. "You did it," he whispered, tears burning in his eyes. "We did it, together." Child's eyes opened weakly, glowing faint but warm. Its voice entered his mind one last time that night. "Safe, Father. Safe." The man held it close, rocking gently. The battle was over, but the war was not. He knew more hunters would come, stronger, more dangerous, but for now, they had survived. The moon shone down on the broken clearing. The shed lay in ruins. The forest smelled of smoke and fire. But in the man's arms, the child breathed softly. Alive, and that was enough. For a human and a disabled alien child had stood against the galaxy's hunters, and won. The forest was quiet again, but the silence was not the same as before. It carried the weight of battle, the smell of smoke, and the memory of struggle. The man stood weakly, his body covered in cuts and bruises. In his arms, the alien child rested, glowing faintly like a fragile star. He staggered back toward the path that led to his house. Each step was heavy, but his heart was strangely light. For the first time in years, he was not walking alone. For the first time, someone depended on him, trusted him, called him father. When he reached the edge of town, the streets were still empty, but he felt eyes watching from windows, shadows pulling back into silence. Perhaps people had seen the light, heard the battle, but no one came out, no one asked. The man did not care. His world now was only the small life he carried in his arms. Inside the house, he laid the child gently on the couch, the same place where it had first slept. He cleaned its wounds with care, bandaging them with strips of cloth. The child watched him with tired eyes, glowing weak but soft. "You safe now?" the man whispered, his voice rough yet tender. The child reached for his hand, whispering into his mind, "Together. Always." Days passed, slow and quiet. The hunters were gone, but the man never felt truly safe. He kept the windows shut, the doors locked, his eyes sharp for any sign of danger. Yet life began to change. The child learned more gestures, more whispers of words. It mimicked his actions, smiled faintly when he laughed, even though its legs remained weak. It found joy in small things: sunlight through the window, the sound of rain on the roof, the warmth of fire. The man discovered something inside himself he thought was long dead: patience, care, and even love. He had lived years in silence, haunted by loss. Now that silence was filled by the presence of a child from the stars. A child who gave him purpose, who gave him hope. One evening, as they sat near the fire, the child whispered something new into his mind. Home, far away. Broken. The man's chest tightened. He saw images flicker in his mind. A world of towers and lights, now in ruins, flames devouring it. Shadows of hunters marching. The child's home was gone, and it was truly alone. But then the whisper came again, soft and trembling. "You My home now. The man closed his eyes, holding back tears. He touched the child's hand and whispered, "And you're mine." At that moment, he realized their bond was no longer about protection or survival. It was family, something unshakable, something eternal. But peace did not last forever. One night, the sky above the forest lit with distant flashes. Not thunder, not lightning, but ships, silent and massive, moving like shadows among the stars. The hunters had been defeated here, but the galaxy was still searching. The child stirred in its sleep, glowing faintly, whispers brushing his mind. They will come again. Stronger. The man stared out of the window, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. He was only one human, a simple man with no army, no technology. But he was no longer afraid, because he was no longer fighting for himself. He was fighting for the child, for family, for the future. In the days that followed, he began to prepare. He rebuilt the shed into a shelter, stocked food, collected tools, and trained his body despite his injuries. He studied the strange symbols that sometimes appeared on the child's skin, learning, piece by piece, that the child's power was not just destruction. It was knowledge, memory, perhaps even the key to something greater. The child grew stronger, too, not in body, but in spirit. It whispered more words into his mind, words of guidance, of warnings, of hope. It tried to stand, its legs trembling. But each time it fell, the man was there to lift it back up. Someday you will walk, he told it, and when you do, I'll be beside you. The child's glowing eyes shined, and the whisper came, "Father." "Promise, promise," he answered, with a small smile. Seasons began to shift. The forest changed. The nights grew colder, but inside the small house, warmth never left. The bond between a human man and a disabled alien child had become something the hunters could never break. It was more than survival, more than blood. It was love. And though the galaxy outside was filled with danger, though the hunters would surely return, the man knew they would face it together. Not as strangers, not as protector and burden, but as family. That night, as he sat watching the stars through the cracked window, the child resting peacefully beside him, he whispered softly to himself, "That night in the forest when I found you, I thought I was saving your life." He looked down at the child, who stirred slightly, glowing faintly. "But maybe you were saving mine." The stars above seemed brighter, as if listening, as if watching. A new beginning had come, not just for a broken alien child, but for a broken man too. Together, they had changed each other's worlds. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy brought. Because sometimes family is not found in blood or planet. Sometimes it is found in the strangest discovery of all, *.